If you'd told me a year ago that I'd be writing something like this, I would have laughed in your face. My wife, Rachel, was the kind of person everyone described as sweet, innocent, and too good for this world. We met in college, and from day one, I knew she was different. While other girls were out partying and living the wild life, Rachel was the type who stayed in to bake cookies or study for her finals. She had this warmth about her, this goodness that made you want to protect her. We got married young, right after graduation, and I thought we had the perfect life. She worked as a preschool teacher, and I ran a small landscaping business. Our routine was simple but happy. Weekends were spent at home, watching movies or going on hikes. Rachel didn't like big crowds or loud music, so we avoided bars and parties. It wasn't my thing either, so it worked. That's why everything that happened feels so surreal. It's like I woke up in someone else's nightmare. It all started when Rachel befriended a new coworker, Maria, who had recently moved to the U.S. from Mexico. Maria was vibrant, full of energy, and very different from Rachel. She loved to dance, go out, and experience everything life had to offer. At first, I thought Maria was good for Rachel. She seemed to bring Rachel out of her shell a little, encouraging her to try new things. Rachel started going out with Maria occasionally, just for dinner or a coffee after work. I didn't mind. Rachel had always been shy, and I figured having a fun, outgoing friend was a good thing. But then the dinners turned into nights out. Maria introduced Rachel to the nightlife scene, taking her to bars and clubs. Rachel would come home late, her cheeks flushed and her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's just dancing," she told me one night when I asked about it. "It's fun, and it's nice to let loose for a change. Maria's teaching me to enjoy life more." I wanted to be supportive, so I didn't push. Rachel was still the same sweet, loving wife I'd always known, just with a newfound appreciation for nightlife. Or so I thought. About a month into Rachel's new hobby, my best friend Tom pulled me aside. Tom and I have been close since high school, and he's the kind of guy who tells it like it is, even when you don't want to hear it. "Greg," he said, his tone serious, "we need to talk about Rachel." "What about her?" I asked, already feeling defensive. Tom hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I saw her at a club last night. She wasn't just dancing, man. She was with this guy, some tall dude with slicked back hair. They were close." I laughed, shaking my head. "Come on, Tom. Rachel's not like that. You know her. She's just having fun with Maria." "I'm telling you, man," he said, his voice firm. "Something's off. You need to keep an eye on her." I brushed him off, refusing to believe it. Rachel was the most loyal, honest person I knew. There was no way she'd do something like that. Tom must have misread the situation. A few weeks later, Rachel went out again, this time for Maria's birthday. She promised to be home by midnight, but when the clock struck 2 and she still wasn't back, I started to worry. I called her, but she didn't pick up. Around 3 a.m., she stumbled through the door, reeking of alcohol and barely able to stand. "What happened?" I asked, helping her to the couch. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" She mumbled something incoherent and passed out. I stayed up all night, watching her sleep, my mind racing. Something wasn't right, but I still didn't want to believe it. The next day, Tom showed up at my house. He looked uncomfortable, almost nervous, which wasn't like him at all. "Greg," he said, "there's something you need to see." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my stomach tightening. He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. "Last night, Rachel was drunk, man. She didn't even know what she was doing." I hit play on the video, and my world shattered. It was Rachel, visibly intoxicated, sitting on a couch at the club. Tom was there too, next to her. They were kissing. Her head lolled onto his shoulder, and it was clear she wasn't in control of her actions, but Tom was. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. "She didn't know what she was doing," Tom said quickly. "She was drunk and I made a mistake. I thought you needed to know." "A mistake?" I roared. "You're supposed to be my friend, Tom. How could you do this?" "I'm sorry," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "But you needed to see the truth." I can't describe what I felt in that moment. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak. It all hit me like a freight train. Tom, my best friend, and Rachel, my wife, two people I trusted more than anyone, had destroyed everything in a single night. And the worst part? She didn't even know what she'd done because she was too drunk to remember. I couldn't even look at Tom. "Get out," I said, my voice low but firm. "Greg, he started, but I cut him off. "I said, get out," I shouted, my fists clenched. "You're not my friend, not anymore." Tom hesitated for a moment before nodding and walking out. I slammed the door behind him and turned back to Rachel, who was still passed out on the couch. The sight of her, so peaceful and unaware, filled me with equal parts anger and sadness. How had it come to this? How had the woman I married, the woman I loved more than anything, become a stranger to me? When Rachel woke up, she looked disoriented. "What happened last night?" she asked, rubbing her temples. "You tell me," I said, my voice cold. "Because I just found out some things you might want to explain." Her eyes widened and she sat up straighter. "Greg, what are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the video Tom had sent me. Her face went pale as she watched it, her hands covering her mouth. When it ended, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Greg, I don't even remember this. I was drunk. I didn't mean for this to happen." "Drunk," I said, my voice rising. "You don't remember? That's your excuse? You went out, got wasted, and ended up with my best friend? Do you have any idea what you've done?" She broke down, sobbing. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she cried. "I love you, Greg. Please, you have to believe me. This isn't who I am." "Then who are you, Rachel?" I demanded. "Because the woman I married wouldn't do this. She wouldn't throw away our life for a night at the club." She couldn't answer. She just sat there, crying, while I paced the room, trying to figure out what to do. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, but beneath it all, there was a deep, aching sense of loss. The life we'd built together, the future I thought we had, was gone. I couldn't stay in the house with her. I grabbed a bag, packed some clothes, and walked out the door without saying another word. I drove around aimlessly, trying to make sense of everything, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Rachel had made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. The next day, I went back to the house. Rachel was waiting for me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Greg, please," she said, rushing to me as I walked in. "Let's talk. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said, my voice cold. "You made your bed, Rachel. Now you can lie in it. Pack your things and leave." She looked at me, stunned. "Greg, don't do this. I made a mistake, but it doesn't mean I don't love you." "You don't love me," I said, my voice breaking. "Because if you did, you wouldn't have done this. You can say it was a mistake, but it doesn't change what happened. I can't forgive you, Rachel. Not this time." Rachel moved out that day, taking her things and leaving me alone in the house we'd shared. The silence was deafening. I spent the first few days in a haze, barely eating or sleeping, just sitting on the couch with a bottle of whiskey, trying to numb the pain. I replayed the events over and over in my head, wondering where I went wrong, what I could have done differently. But the truth is, it wasn't my fault. Rachel made her choices, and Tom made his. They were the ones who betrayed me, not the other way around. I sold the house a month later. I couldn't stand being there, surrounded by memories of a life that no longer existed. I moved into a small apartment downtown, where no one knew me or my story. For a while, I kept to myself, avoiding friends and family, too ashamed to tell them what had happened. But eventually, I started to rebuild. I joined a support group, started therapy, and slowly began to piece my life back together. It wasn't easy, and there are still days when the pain feels fresh, but I'm learning to let go. Looking back, I've realized a few things. First, trust is everything in a relationship. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. Second, people aren't always who you think they are. Rachel was a good girl, or so I thought, but even the best people can make the worst choices. And finally, you can't control what others do. You can only control how you respond. If I could give advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this. Don't ignore the red flags. Trust your gut, and don't be afraid to walk away if someone isn't treating you with the respect you deserve. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't value you. As for me, I'm still figuring things out. I don't know if I'll ever trust someone enough to get married again, but I'm okay with that. For now, I'm focusing on myself and trying to find happiness in the little things. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you have forgiven her, or was walking away the right choice? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts.